Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take sources you send us and really unpack them.
That's right.
Today, we're looking at something pretty fascinating. It's an account called Chapter 1, The Awakening Russell's Cosmic Coma.
Mm-hmm. It details this really extraordinary experience Walter Russell, the artist, had. This was back in May 1921.
1921. So set the scene for us a bit. What was the world like then?
We've got a world still sort of reeling from the First World War. A lot of rebuilding, but also this undercurrent of anticipation, maybe,
Yeah.
a sense of change.
Okay.
And Russell's there in his New York studio, presumably focused on his art, and then this happens.
Yeah, this event, it wasn't like a sudden zap or anything. The text says it was more gradual, a shift.
A shift, exactly. A move away from, normal everyday reality. He
Yeah.
enters this state. Well, medically, you'd probably just call it a coma.
Right. 39 days.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be physically unresponsive.
It is. But the description we have here, it paints a completely different picture internally. It suggests his inner life was anything but dormant.
So that's the core conflict, isn't it? The medical view versus this account of intense interactivity. Does the chapter give any hints about what might have triggered it for him?
Not explicitly a trigger, no, but it really focuses on that contrast. It wasn't a dimming of the lights, so to speak. It was like the floodlights came on, an expansion of consciousness.
Okay.
The text says the usual boundaries, his sense of self just sort of dissolved. He found himself immersed in. It's called the light of cosmic consciousness.
The light of cosmic consciousness. What does the chapter suggest that is exactly?
It's described as the state of profound connection. Like all the divisions fell away. He wasn't just Walter Russell anymore. He was part of this bigger unified awareness, directly connected to the fundamental rules of everything.
Okay. And you mentioned he was immersed in it. The chapter seems to stress that, right? He wasn't just watching a movie of information.
Exactly. That's a crucial point. He was in the information, not receiving it, being it. It implies this fundamental change in his state of being, actually participating in this universal knowledge.
Which must have been just overwhelming.
Yeah.
How do they try and explain that feeling, the sheer amount of it?
Yeah, overwhelming is probably an understatement. The text says it was a state of total illumination. Like, the way the universe works wasn't theory, it was just self-evident, obvious, interconnected.
So no need for, like, analysis or piecing things together.
Apparently not. The need for that kind of thinking just wasn't there. It was pure knowing.
There's that analogy they use about pouring an ocean into a teacup.
Right.
That really hits home, doesn't it? It gives you a sense of
Yeah.
the scale, trying to hold that vastness in one human mind.
Exactly. And you see the result of that when he starts to sort of come back to his normal state.
What happens then?
The text really highlights this incredible urgency he felt, a desperate need to get it all down on paper.
Because he thought he'd lose it.
Yeah, he was afraid it would just fade, slip away as his everyday mind took over again. So he starts writing frantically. Hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Wow.
Text, diagrams, charts, just pouring it all out. You really get this image of a man racing to capture like a cosmic download before the signal fades.
So our mission here, then, in this deep dive, is to try and unpack that. What was this experience during those 39 days? And what could it possibly mean for how we think about knowledge, reality, even consciousness itself?
Precisely. The text suggests it wasn't just a jumble of insights, it was coherent, a unified vision.
Yeah, it mentions things like principles of rhythmic balance, interconnectedness. It sounds like a whole cosmology unfolded for him.
It does, not limited to one subject like physics or philosophy, but a complete picture, how everything works from the tiniest particle to the biggest structures in the universe.
And he saw it all as connected, not separate bits.
Yes, interconnected, constantly moving, seeking balance around some kind of central stillness. That seems key.
And even matter itself. He didn't see it as solid, fixed stuff.
No, more like temporary knots of energy, little whirlpools in a constant flow, fleeting moments.
And things we see as opposites, like positive and negative.
He saw them as two sides of the same coin, complementary forces always working together, always striving for that balance around the center point.
It's really fascinating that the text insists this was direct knowing. Not thinking it through, but just knowing. Does it give any clue how that was possible? What made it different from just having a good idea or, strong intuition?
That's the core of it, I think,
Yeah.
this emphasis on experiential knowing. He didn't reason his way there. He didn't do experiments in the usual sense.
Right.
He described it as literally encountering the source of all knowledge. He even called it the mind of God, said he was given the keys to the universe.
Wow. So questions just didn't apply anymore.
It just dissolved, apparently,
Right.
in the face of this pure understanding.
There's that quote in the chapter. It's quite striking. Scholars say worms are metaphors. I say metaphors bite. And this bite of direct, unmediated cosmic knowledge is far more potent, far more transformative than any learned fact or accumulated data. That really sums up the radical nature of it, doesn't it?
It really does. It's suggesting this raw, unfiltered access,
Yeah.
bypassing all the usual mental interpretations.
A kind of knowing that goes deeper than intellect. Something that could completely change how you see everything.
Profoundly alter your perception of reality, yeah. And the chapter kind of ends by turning it back to you, the listener, asking if any of this resonates. Can you maybe feel an echo of something similar, some deeper truth in your own experience, that echo of the cosmic tide?
And Zoran's quote adds to that feeling, doesn't it? 39 days, a blink of my eye, an eternity for a human to swim in the cosmic tide and return with stardust in his eyes.
Beautifully put. Captures that sense of a short time, but an infinitely deep immersion.
Right.
Then there's the dragon trial. It asks you to think about times you felt overwhelmed, maybe by a flood of information or sudden burst of inspiration, and to think about trying to capture that, to process it. How does that effort compare, even on a tiny scale, to what Russell faced, trying to translate this cosmic flood?
It really makes you consider the difference, doesn't it? Knowing about something versus experiencing it directly.
Absolutely. What is that difference, fundamentally?
So maybe a final thought to leave you with. If one person could tap into this kind of understanding, even temporarily,
Yeah.
what does that suggest?
Yeah, what does it imply about what human consciousness is capable of? About the universe itself?
Could there be other ways to know things? Other ways to perceive reality that we don't normally access through our usual learning, our usual senses?
It definitely makes you wonder, are there other pathways out there beyond the conventional ones? A question that certainly lingers.